Welcome back to Race and Sports in America Conversations. I'm your host, Damon Hack. We introduced our second group of panelists. NBA All-Star Steph Curry has joined us. NBA Hall of Famer Charles Barkley. Baseball Hall of Fame shortstop Ozzie Smith. Major League Baseball All-Star Jimmy Rollins. Appreciate all of you joining me this evening. Charles, we're sitting here mainly because of the events of May 25th, the death of an unarmed black man, George Floyd. It was caught on camera. It's been a talking point for our country. What have your emotions been like since that fateful day?
Well, I think that was the most painful thing for any. First of all, it don't have to be a black person. If you got any humanity in your heart, to see somebody kneeling on a man for 9 minutes and he's telling you he can't breathe, people in the crowd are telling you he can't breathe, to see that, it was the first time I ever seen a person die, and it was painful. And you know, Damon, it is so stressful on guys like us being famous black people because we have to comment on everything. So you think about a 3-week period. You saw the young black man, Mr. Aubrey in Georgia, who was jogging, who got killed. You saw the thing in New York where this young lady was screaming at a black guy because he told her to put her dog on a leash. And then like the next week, you see Mr. Floyd murdered. When you're a black celebrity, you have to come, especially when you're on television, you have to talk about this stuff all the time, and it is stressful.
What's it been like? This is not a new story, Ozzie.
No, it's not a new story, and I think it's piggyback on what Charles said. You know, it's different when you have a chance to see it happening right before your eyes, and I think that's what has been so prevalent here, is that people had a chance to see it for themselves. They hear us talk about it all the time, but this was in your face, and it's something that we as black men have to deal with all the time. It's different when we walk out, when we have to sit down and have that conversation with our kids. It's different. It's something that we have to do. It's not something that's pleasant, but we have to do it. We have to sit down and have that conversation with our kids about how they deal with the police. And it's never easy, because you can get into a situation by where you say to your son, you know, this is what you do, son. And then he'll say to me, well, this is what my son said to me. He said, well, the kid that got shot in his car, he said, was reaching for his license. The officer asked him for his license, and he says, do you have a gun? Yes, I have a gun. I have a permit. So he reaches for his gun and he shoots him. And my son said he was doing what the officer asked him to do, and he's dead. So it becomes very tough for us.
What are these conversations like for you? You're having these conversations with your young children already.
For sure. I think as a young father with a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old, the questions that they're asking, because they're being shown these images, you can't and you shouldn't really shield them from this. And the way that we go about as parents, talking to them, being honest and truthful about how society has been for 400 plus years, and all that we are trying to do collectively to take this moment, turn it into a movement, and keep applying pressure to change our experience. I think it's rewarding, but knowing that you might not see the results right away, but we have to continue to double down and keep people accountable in all, you know, walks of life, all industries, all forms of leadership, the judicial system, all those type of things, and hopefully for my kids' generation, their kids, we will see change. I'm hopeful and optimistic about it, but I don't understand how much work we'll need to go into that.
Is it exhausting, Jimmy? How exhausting is it? Chuck talked about this isn't new for a lot of people, but it's new for maybe the majority of Americans, but this is nothing new for the black community.
Nothing new at all. I mean, we've seen video after video after video, usually resulting in someone getting shot for doing something they're asked because their color is their gun. Being the wrong color and the wrong neighborhood means you're an automatic threat. But when you look at the majority of gun owners, they aren't black men. They aren't black people in general. We shy away from gun stores. We shy away from going to get permits and license to carry because we're not comfortable even when we walk in. So going to a gun store, am I a criminal? That's the first thing you're thinking that they're thinking. Well, what do you need your gun for? Who are you planning to go kill? But yet, when we get pulled over or we're walking down the street or doing just the normal things that any American or any person in this world is doing, we're already a threat for doing it. And if you're in a wrong neighborhood, what are you doing here? You have to be up to no good. So it's something that isn't new. George Floyd situation, you know, watching a man being suffocated and choked out like that for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, that was new. We've seen people get shot. It's like, okay, well, he's going to get shot again. When I was watching the video, not knowing, you know, the full story prior to it, I just pulled it up and it was there. I'm thinking, okay, he got up and he got shot. But then as it gets going, it's like this man is really kneeling on his neck with no remorse. Kind of like, I don't want to listen to you because I don't have to. So that part was new. Here it is, a guy actually not being shot, being choked out with the man on top of him, making a decision, I am taking your life because I can. Over a $20 or counterfeit $20 bill, you don't die over that.
You know, Damon, one of the big problems is television. See, America is segregated. White people live here, black people live here, Hispanics live there, Jewish people live here, rich people live here, poor people live here. So one of the problems we have with race in this country is your only perception of other races is what you see on television. We've been watching television a long time. We know the black guy's gonna be bad. We know the Hispanic's gonna be bad. And we know if it's gonna be some Muslim, they're gonna be blowing some stuff up. So whether you want to say you're racist or not, you have a preconceived notion because you have no choice. Because you know when you watch TV, well, I mean, we don't see a lot of black doctors and lawyers on television. So America is going to have to open up your heart and say, wait a minute. Just because I see something on television, when I interact with that group, I got to block that mindset saying, oh, when I see black people walking toward me, I know I saw them do some crazy stuff in a movie or in a TV show, but they're not like that, how we're portrayed.
What's interesting, you guys have all played at the highest level. You've had people that will cheer for you when you're wearing a uniform, but if you were walking down the street and not wearing your uniform and you had a hoodie on, they might look at you a little bit different. How do you navigate that?
Well, let me say this here. You know, in St. Louis where I live, it's going to be different for me than it is for some other black guy. I'm not treated the same way that other black people are treated, and I don't know if that's the case for these guys. I would, if I had to guess, I'd say that it's a little bit different when Charles walks in, or Steph, or Jimmy, because we've been out there and people see us and people have an idea of what our personalities and the things are like, and they know that we're not bad people. So it's different for us than it would be for somebody else. But in St. Louis, it's, you know, I can't say that it's been a terrible experience for me. I haven't had a lot of bad experiences because of who I am and what I did.
See, I want to piggyback on something Ozzie said. He's 100% correct. The notion that rich and famous black people are treated like regular black people, that's not right. We get treated great. But I always worry about how we treat poor black people. You know, there's a great thing in Spike Lee, who I really admire and respect. In that movie, Do the Right Thing. That is a perfect illustration of what Ozzie's talking about, what I'm talking about. When the guy says, you know, you hate black people. He says, yeah, I hate black people. He says, well, who's your favorite entertainer? He says, Michael Jackson. He said, who's your favorite jock? He says, Michael Jordan. He said, they're black. And he said, well, they're not black.
Right.
And that's the disadvantage of us for, we are at a disadvantage because white people treat us great. And like I say, I'm not worried about how they treat us because it really comes down to economics too at some point. Because rich black people aren't treated like poor black people. And that's the thing we got to really engage conversation. How can we give more black people and poor white people also, because they're in the same boat, give them economic opportunity? That's what America's really got to grapple with.
I think one thing you said too is the preconceived notions of how they view rich, successful black people as the anomalies in our intelligence and our well-spokenness. That's always the first thing you hear. If somebody knows how to be articulate, if they know how to
So well-spoken.
come into a room and sit in a room.
What does that mean?
So like that's the subtle racism and prejudice that kind of starts to add on itself. And if another white person hears that comment, they're going to think the same exact thing. And that's not going to trickle down to anybody else and be able to create opportunities for somebody else to get in that room and prove their value, prove their worth. And so it's just shifting perspectives and, again, holding everybody accountable, whether it's a private conversation, whether it's a tweet, whether it's a video, whatever it is, to do the right thing, no pun intended, but to see everybody as equal, and that's all we're asking for.
You know,
Damon, let me jump in.
Go ahead.
No, like talking about wearing hoodies. I wear hoodies. You wear hoodies. And I've asked myself a number of times, even while playing, just because I've had run-ins where I've had 16 guns pointed at me, getting pulled over on the side of the freeway because I got accused of looking a certain way. I'm already in the big leagues, dropping off my car, picking up my cousin's truck right there in Hayward, get on the freeway. I'm accused of stealing the car. I'm like, but I'm rich. That is my car that I dropped off, and you accuse me of stealing this one. Just a whole situation. But and since that point, even in my playing career, I'd ask myself, the police officer that's on the field, that's taking us to the airport, if I wasn't in uniform and this guy saw me on the street and pulled me over, or, you know, somebody's trying to get into a fight, and I'm just in any situation where they're not expecting me, am I Jimmy Rollins in uniform? The guy that you communicate with, you have a sense of my personality, know that I'm generally a good person, or am I a black man that is just on the street in a situation? That's something and I'll never know, because yes, we do get that preferential treatment, but it's something that's always in the back of my mind, because I know there have been instances where I'm not per se in Philadelphia and I'm not treated that way. I've had guns pointed at me, just like, I can't do the wrong thing. I'm doing everything they say, but still in the back of my mind knowing if my finger twitches too fast for them, I might get shot.
Being a World Series champion doesn't help you at that point.
Not
Being
at
a
all.
three-time
Not at
All-Star
all.
doesn't help you at that point.
All they say is the skin complex. We don't know this man, and he must be armed and dangerous.
What can the fans do? What should they know? It's almost like in the last few weeks, white America and most of the country has awakened to these issues. What should fans do?
You know, I've been doing a lot of speaking to teams. A lot of coaches asked me to speak to their teams about this situation. What I told them was, guys, first of all, relax and breathe. This crap started 400 years ago. We can't do nothing about that. We can't do anything about systematic racism. What I challenge every black person, every white person to do, what can I do today going forward? This stuff has been set up for 400 years. Redlining, using jail as a weapon. So we can't do anything about that. All this stuff has been set in place to weaponize against black people and poor people for a long time. But what I can do now, all of us can say, what can I do going forward? And you have to ask yourself, I want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. Because if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. But I can't get mad at slavery. It happened 400 years ago. Nobody around here was born when this stuff started. Nobody put these bills and laws into existence. They've been in existence before I was born. But what I can do now is I can do good stuff going forward. And one thing I talk to black kids about, man, we got to get our education. I think we are the worst group in the world as far as value in education. When I made that role model commercial in late 80s, when I went to Nike, I said, I want to make this commercial because we all do a lot of speaking at schools. But the one thing I noticed when I was going to these schools, when I go to predominantly white schools, I said, well, what do you want to do? They're like, I said, how many of y'all want to play pro sports? Only about 5% raised their hands. I said, what do you want to do? I want to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, teacher, accountant, things like that. But the problem I was noticing in the black community, man, when you go speak to black kids, they all think they're going to be Steph or Ozzie or Jimmy or Chuck. But if you got your education and you got your degree and a good job and a career, you can withstand a lot of crap that people put roadblocks in your way. That's the number one thing when I talk to kids. Man, get your education. I hope everybody can grow up to be Steph, Ozzie, or Jimmy, or Chuck. But that's like hitting the lottery. But they can't ever take your education away from you, period.
But to go along with that, And, you know, because when you go to these neighborhoods and you go talk to kids or even cousins that are still in the hood, society literally only shows them your way out is through entertainment. So like you said, through history, it's always been entertainment. Oh, you're not black if you're an entertainer, or you're black but you're different. Yeah. They accept you. So we've been taught you can't have the top, but you can have all the little things along the way. Yeah. So we go buy the fancy clothes and not invest in education. These Jordans cost $500, but this online class costs $500. Now I'm gonna get those J's because I'm gonna look good. Yeah. I'm not gonna invest in myself because nothing's ever been shown where if I become educated that there's really an opportunity for me. I can make some money and have a decent living, but I want more than that. There's no distribution of wealth, privileges, or opportunities. So the way the kids see society is literally through rapping, through sports, and through hustling.
That's it.
Let's just be honest, through hustling. You know what I'm
saying? We live in such an instantaneous society.
Yeah.
You know, you push a button, and you say something, you push a button, it can go all over the world. Yeah. Mm. And kids think of, they think of life that way. You know, that, hey, you know, I'm gonna become Steph Curry. You know, when they're playing in the backyard, I'm Steph Curry, or I'm Chuck, I'm Jimmy, I'm Ozzie, and Chuck is right. You got to educate yourself, because if you got an education, you're only going to get out of something what you put in. Yeah. If you don't put nothing in, you shouldn't expect anything in return, and that's life.
100%. And there's no better time to be living to have those opportunities and that access. Like you said, an online class costs the same as J's, and it can help advance your life. Generations past, you had to go through hoops and hurdles just to try to get access to thought leaders and you know, certain educational programs that just weren't right in front of you. Right now, you're just going, I can do homework in an hour and figure out a program that's going to help me find a passion, find a career. You got to be disciplined. It's going to take some work, but it's right. Like, this is the generation to do it because we have access to everything.
And let me tell you something, Damon. What Steph is talking about, this is the ground zero point in our lives right now. Because with this pandemic, our lives ain't never going to be the same again, ever.
Yeah.
And everything wrong in your life is coming out right now because you ain't got no job. You know, if you got a bad business, it's probably going to go under. This is the point where everybody's going to have to draw a line in the sand and say, hey, I got to get my education, because all these hotel jobs are going to be drying up. All these restaurant jobs are going to be drying up. So now, you got to really, in now technology world, man, you got to really get your crap together now, because our world is never going to be the same again. You know, obviously with the social justice stuff is really, really important, significant. And you piggyback that with this pandemic, oh man, we got a lot. It's going to be a lot of stuff happening in the next 3 or 4 years to try to get back to normal or change the direction of your life. And I always tell kids, man, hey, I wish I could be Steph Curry, but hey, he's only one him. You got to go and get that education. And now, because I don't know when these kids gonna go back to school. I mean, we don't know. I mean, Steph the only one and Jimmy got young kids. I mean, I don't even know when they're gonna go back to school again. They're gonna have to be learning online. They're talking about, in Alabama, I'm working with my high school, and we're gonna have 10 to 12, 15 kids, and the rest got to learn from home. And I'm like, well, what if they don't have access to stuff at home?
And they assume that. They assume that you have iPads, computers, and fortunately we do. But when they we do. But when they say, well, we're gonna do online classes, and I'm sitting there like, but how do you just assume that every kid at this school, some are paying, some are on scholarship, have that at home? You can't assume that, but in their mind, everyone has it.
Everybody
Not
has
understanding what's going on in the inner cities or in poor communities. Now, you might have an iPad, you might have a phone, but it might be one for the entire family. Just to assume we have multiple kids that everybody's going to be able to go online, that's just not real. So those 15 kids, now that's just even less opportunity, which, as you guys are saying, education becomes that much greater of an importance.
So we have a pandemic that's disproportionately affecting black and brown communities. We have systemic racism, as you mentioned, 400 years in the making that we can't relitigate.
Yes.
We can't go back. What's your level of optimism then that these deep-rooted issues can be fixed?
First of all, you're either hopeless or hopeful.
Yep.
It's either A or B. I'm always going to be positive. Hey, when I was growing up, they bombed a church in my hometown of Leeds, Birmingham. I mean, we've come a long way. We can go to same restaurants and bathrooms, and I know that stuff sounds silly, but like, we've come a long way. We still have a long way to go, but I'm gonna always be hopeful. I'm gonna always, like, cause number one, these guys, you ask us, yo man, we're for the luckiest people ever lived. I am so lucky, I am so blessed, but I'm always gonna be hopeful. I mean, cause I'm never gonna be like, oh, we can't get better. It's just gonna be like this. No, it's gonna always be better.
I tell you, Damon, you know, there's hope when you look at the demonstrations that are going on. Our white brothers, our Latino brothers. There's more of them out there than it is us. So there's an awareness now that hasn't been there, that I think that as we go forward, if we keep the pressure on, as Steph said, you got to keep the pressure on, change is coming.
Is sports the vehicle? I mean,
It's always been the
throughout
vehicle.
history leading.
That's right. It's
the
always
charge.
leading. It's always leading the way, and I think that, you know, that's why right now it's such a bad time for everybody, because we don't have any sports. You know, it's been tough for everybody, but you know, hopefully we can get sports back, and once sports get back, you know, we'll continue to take the steps it's going to take for us to get to a point to where there's some degree of equality.
Let me say something though about what he said. What you said about sports. Sports can help, but these people got to help themselves also. Hey, like, you have to ask yourself, what am I doing to help my own community? Everybody has to answer their own personal question.
Everybody's got a role in this, like you said.
Yes.
You think about the protests, you said, the participation on every different side of the conversation, to the impact of social media and people just posting and reposting and sharing information. That's important. You got people in the streets that have been, you got real life activists that do this for a living. They do this and have been doing it for years, and now we just need to support them. Send resources, volunteer your time, put them on a pedestal, because we don't know all the answers. Like you said, every community has different issues. We all have the ability to kind of ignite those kind of efforts, and again, be able to put people in position to really make change. I think that's one of our main goals, knowing the platform we have, knowing what sports has given us in our lives, and people that if you say anything, it's going to be a headline. So why not use it? And find those people that have dedicated their lives to this work, that are the real life heroes in these communities doing the Lord's work. And for us, that's our job. So everybody's got a role in this. We might not see it. Our kids might not see it. Their kids hopefully will. Like, who knows?
And what I love about this movement is like what Ozzie said. It isn't just black people out there. It isn't just, you know, whites that are supporting blacks. There are Asians. There are Hispanics. There are people from every walk, because they understand if a black life matters, then all the rest of the lives will matter. Blacks were enslaved people, brought here, put at the bottom, put in the dirt, built this country, and to not get anything back from it. So if we make what's perceived the bottom level, get them access, make sure that they're accounted for, everything that's perceived to be on top of them becomes that much more valuable. That if we pull them up, because we've been hollering and screaming as a culture for years, and it's always, you playing a black card. There goes the black. Oh, just watch what happens. They're going to go off again. Yep. Give them a week and it'll be over. Now they understand that it isn't just about us. We aren't screaming for us. When we say Black Lives Matter, yes, all lives matter. But in this very moment, we just need you to help us and help them and empower to understand that Black Lives Matter. That's all we're saying. It's not about other lives, and people are finally waking up to that. Unfortunately, because of what happened to George Floyd, but you can no longer ignore it. You can choose to act like you don't know what's going on, and I just don't understand. There will be things you don't understand, but do your research, talk to people, talk to friends, find out how you can make a difference, and then you will start to understand. You will start to see people for who they are and understand what this movement and what we've been fighting for so long is all about.
1 year from now, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked the previous panel. What should our conversation be?
Well, the first thing we need, listen, we need police reform. We need to, listen, I've gotten in trouble for defending cops, and I'm always going to defend cops. I don't want them out there killing unarmed black men, but we need cops. Because, you know, you hear these fools on television talking about defunding the police and things like that. You know who's not going to fund the police? Good neighborhoods. Who are poor black people and poor white people supposed to call? Ghostbusters when crime going on? We need cops, but we need good cops. We need to hold cops accountable if they do something wrong. The way the system is set up now, if cops do something wrong, other cops judge them. That's not fair in any aspect of life. If you're a cop and you saw what happened to Mr. Floyd and you think that was all right, you shouldn't be a cop. I mean,
Equal justice.
yeah. When you see Mr. Floyd on the ground, and listen, we know that cops, they're in an awkward situation at times and they're fighting for their lives. But when you see Mr. Floyd on the ground and my man got his hands in his pocket like he's sitting, like we're doing now, just chilling at the beach, you know, like, that's wrong, man.
There's no threat.
And cops should be able to hold cops accountable. Secondly, we have got to make sure, we got to fix the school system because the flaws that already have been shown in public schools gonna be more out there now because of the pandemic. So the gap between the rich and the poor, which is already humongous, is only going to grow. We've got to find a way to give poor people economic opportunity. Born poor doesn't mean you should have to be poor your whole life. You shouldn't have to be a Hall of Famer, a Hall of Famer, and a Hall of Famer, and a Hall of Famer to get out.
Piggybacking on what Chuck said there, I think the word defund the police has been, it was the wrong word to use. Reform. And I think that it's important to take some of the pressure off of a police officer. You know, put money into a program for a psychologist or somebody who can go to a home where they have some type of dispute. Don't send a guy with a gun to a home where there's some type of family dispute, and that's what we use cops for. We use them for all the wrong things, and I think that it's about reforming cops and not taking money away from them. Certainly, we can't get rid of. We need policemen, and all policemen aren't bad. All policemen are not bad, but the bad ones have to be weeded out. Just like if we have bad teammates, you know what? It's up to us as a team to weed that bad guy out so that he doesn't spoil a whole bunch. And so it's reform rather than defund that I think has thrown people off.
Great word, Ozzie.
I think so. No. The same concept around reforming police, getting the bad ones out, is in every form of leadership and government in terms of how important voting is, not just at the national presidential level, but in our local, city, state elections.
Which are more important.
Is absolutely more important. That's where the real change happens. So when it comes to voter suppression, which we've seen since George Floyd's passing in Georgia, we've seen long lines. People have been standing in there for 12, 13 hours trying to vote. And that's for a local election. As we look forward from a year from now and then beyond every single cycle, how do we continue to let our voices be heard, not just what we're saying and crying for and asking for help, but how can we actually use our given right to go vote, to go put people in position of power that are going to look out for us in a very meaningful way that's going to make a true difference. And that's something that is so, the sense of urgency in that to me is just so real. Because we're coming up on November, then we're going to be coming up on the next cycle, and we need to have our voices heard at the polls to, again, hold people in positions of authority and power accountable for looking out for everybody equally, and we got to solve that.
How about you?
And the last piece, you know, we've touched it all. It's just prison reform.
Yeah.
I mean, the way that we're persecuted for something minor, just completely over-sentenced, mandatory minimums that take discretion out of the judge's hand. Well, what are they to do other than just to hit the gavel and read the sentence? Like, if you can't let the judge listen to a situation and understand it in its full circle and make a decision, then there's no point of having them. You leaving up to the jurors and you giving them, it either has to be this or that, and there's nothing in between. That's not fair, especially when you look at the way one crime by this person of color, one crime by this white person, and you're getting 3 years, and they're getting a house arrest for a couple months, go check in, do some volunteer work, and they're scrubbed clean. But we're in jail now. That's mom or dad taken away from the society that could have had an impact on, and sometimes breaking laws you don't even know exist. Yeah. Or that is really for something that minor, I'm doing this much time. People are out there getting killed and getting less time than I'm getting. Those are just things that really need to change. And it was the crime bill, and it was the thing to do, was the hot topic. Democrats, trying to, hey, we're tough on crime like Republicans, and just went way too far. No, realizing now that it was a mistake, well, you can correct that. You can start making those changes at the local level, then the federal level, that make those changes. Like, put pressure on them, double down on that pressure, because if that doesn't change, it's going to be hard to do the things, with the police officers, because they're still going to be in a position, well, our job is to go arrest or shoot. But if there's an option, let's bring this guy in, let's bring a social worker to a domestic dispute, they have options. We don't have to do that. Maybe you don't need an officer to tell your neighbor to cut down his radio. Maybe there's another department that you could put in there for, some type of prevention of those type of things.
Gentlemen, so many complex issues. I appreciate your time, your thoughts, and your honesty. Thank you very much.
No, man, thank you for doing this.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for doing this.
And a big thanks to all our panelists this evening, and a reminder, this conversation is also available in podcast form. It includes an interview with the NFL Hall of Famer Jerome Bettis. Thanks for listening. Have a good evening.